Okay, let's get started. Good afternoon, everybody. This is the June 9th Hood River White Salmon Bridge Authority Commission meeting. And when I look around, roll call, got Mike Fox, Arthur Babbitts, Grant Polson, Catherine Thomas, Jake Edwards from Oregon. And I see Jake Anderson, Ben Berger. Anybody else from Washington? Okay, so Ben, you're going to be voting today. Okay. I do believe we do have a quorum.
Yep.
Okay, any modifications, additions to the agenda? And Mike, I believe you had some.
Just one note that was sent to us. We should have struck out Seth Gilchrist and made that vacant for Alt 1 on the Washington side.
Yeah, he's gone now.
Yeah, so we'll update that on the next one.
Have we got anything from the commissioners up there yet?
I have not heard anything from the county. Is that something you want? I guess that's
I'll reach out to them.
do you want staff to reach out and
I'll reach out to them.
check on that? Or?
And you might remind them of the procedure with, we kind of, when we had to start this process, we forgot about the consultation. With the cities.
Yeah.
Okay, let's go on, item 3.
Okay, Gary said it's not getting audio. Can everyone hear us? Yes, okay,
Yeah, okay.
Yes.
thank you. It was back to Gary.
Okay, item number 3, is there any corrections to the meeting minutes from the regular board meeting, May the 12th? And if not, could I have a motion to approve?
I would move to approve the May 12th regular board meeting minutes as presented.
And a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
I'm going to
Opposed?
abstain since I wasn't part of that meeting.
So that should still be okay. Yeah, okay. Budget committee meeting minutes, May 19th. Any corrections or can I have a motion to approve?
Move to approve the minutes from May 19th.
Second?
All in favor? Aye. Okay, motion passes. Public comment, 3 minutes per person, 30-minute max. Do we have anybody from the public? We have none in the room. Anybody online? If you do, please raise your electronic hand. Seeing none, we will proceed forward. Executive reports, co-chair, anything? Brent, or your,
Yeah.
I'm looking at Jake and calling it Brent.
No reports.
The director report.
Have I included kind of our current activities when we get the informational items? We're going to go through a lot of these in more depth.
Yeah, we kind of changed things around a little bit where we put more feet into the informational items.
Yeah.
So we had time to see that.
Well, if there's no questions on any of the current activities, we can answer questions, but we read them back to you.
And let the record show Eric Wilson joined us in the room. Legal report.
I sent that out to the commissioners.
Yeah.
Well,
Everybody read the report?
Yeah.
Any questions on the report?
Question 2.
Government relations.
and
Let's go to Dan.
Can you all hear me?
yeah, yes, Dan.
Thank you. I'm buried in a corner of the Capitol, so apologize for any background noise you hear. The quick update is we continue to be on track for securing funding as best we can. It's still a very everything remains in flux. You'll recall that there are 3 different options. One is our bill, which is sitting in Ways and Means. The other was through capital construction, which would be at the end of a bill at the end, or potentially the transportation package. You will note that the newest version of the transportation package is actually being introduced today. And there will be a series of hearings this week on it. There is a pot of funding for projects. Those projects that are listed on there are the big ODOT projects. There is ongoing discussion about the best way in the vehicle by which to fund our project. My sense is that there continues to be an ongoing desire to do that and a commitment, and we are in the final commitment's too strong. There is an ongoing desire. You don't see it, you don't know it till you see it, to deliver on Oregon's side of this. So that's where we are. I'm happy to answer any questions, but we continue to push all three of those opportunities. And we have a little less than 20 days left.
And Dan, I'm sure you shared the news from Washington State.
We have, in fact, it's been great. It's one of the motivating factors for people when you ask them about this. They say, yeah, we have to do this because Washington's already done it. So it is a motivating factor, and people are excited about it.
Yeah, Arthur?
Yeah, Dan, you said the transportation package is expected to be introduced today. Has anyone seen text of it yet, or is this something that's still very closely held?
The text was just released at about 10 o'clock.
Okay, so we can see it on all this?
Yes. Yep.
Great, thanks.
And we're not in it, right?
That is correct.
I just want to see for other
Yeah.
issues.
Oh, we don't care about others.
Some of us do.
Dan, can you talk a little bit about this Republican transportation bill that I saw an article on?
Sure. There are really three major proposals out there. There is a proposal that was released today that is being negotiated with some Republicans, includes members of the Transportation Committee have been involved in that. I think it would be a stretch to somehow suggest that it is their bill, but they have been negotiating. And then there is the Republican leadership package that is largely a cuts-oriented package, as well as a shifting of prioritization from some of the non-traditional highway bridge style funding to more of operation and maintenance and bridges. And so it's more of a right sizing, produce accountability at ODOT, and then the way that you fund what needs to be funded is taken from places that they consider not to be priorities, is the best way to describe that package. Happy to forward on the details. And then there's a third package that has been introduced and discussed by two members, Senator and Senator Pham, whom this group has met with before, as well as Representative Gamba, that is sort of seen as the more sort of progressive, in quotes, package that is more focused on a broader set of transportation issues that has some different funding mechanisms. So those are really the three packages that exist out there.
Dan, that Republican leadership package, I remember when it came out like 3 weeks ago, there was a little bit of press on it. Has there been another version of it, or is that the one that you're talking about?
There has been both a iteration of it, and then it too was introduced this morning. So it's available on OLS.
Thank you.
Yep.
Okay, I don't see Washington State. Let's go to the feds, Jim.
There we go. Yep.
Yep.
Can you hear me?
Yep.
Great. Okay. Well, thanks. Yeah, we are currently, working with Mike and with Dan Marr on hopefully the finalization of the project agreement or grant agreement for the infra grant. So we're coordinating with Dan on a press statement and making sure we get appropriate thank yous out to folks who were supportive and, you know, our champions here on the federal level. Hopefully that comes soon. Sounds like they're getting close. So, you know, we'll be making those, giving folks a heads up here shortly. Also, shared with Mike.
You went on mute, Jim.
I don't know how that happened. Sorry. Not sure when I cut out. Yeah, so just shared that the BIP NOFO had been updated by the administration. So they issued that updated NOFO last week, I believe, for $4.9 billion.
We're all over.
Removed the any reference to climate, environmental justice, DEI programs. So again, we're working with Dan Marr and Mike Shannon on just, you know, what we need to be doing in terms of lining up congressional support, letting them know, you know, that we're going to be updating our current application and then submitting again for FY 26 funding. So just making sure everybody's aware of what we're doing, why we're doing it, and getting those letters of support lined up. And then the last thing, just to mention, on Wednesday, we expect the Environment Public Works Committee in the Senate to report out Sean McMaster's nomination to be Federal Highway Administrator. So I think that'd be a good thing in terms of just the normal operation of federal highways. They really have very few political folks down there, so they don't have a lot of political leadership. So I think it'd be good if he can get through the Senate, which of course, you know, getting out of committees step one and getting through the Senate. You know, we don't know what the timing on that will be, but it'd be good to see senior political leadership at the head of the Federal Highway Administration.
And a question, Mike, this is the guy that we know.
Yeah.
Okay. Should we try and get a meeting with him in the next month?
I don't know if I mean, he probably won't be taking meetings until he's confirmed by the Senate.
Okay.
So,
do we expect any problems getting him?
I don't think there's any
Confirmed.
problems. I think it's just a bigger issue with nominations just generally.
Yeah.
And I don't mean this to sound, you know, negative, but Federal Highway Administrator is not one that, you know, they're going to be in a position to spend a lot of political capital on. So it's really going to end up, you know, as they're heading towards like the 4th of July recess or the August recess, probably packaged with a bunch of other nominations to go through.
So Jim, the other thing that is a concern, at least to me, is that we send in our agreement this Friday for the infra money to get access to it. Getting that turned around is really critical for us. We want to award a design contract 1B to Kiewit and get moving, but we can't do that until we see the checks start getting approved, that we can spend that money, at least the 75 of the 83 money.
Is there a question?
Yeah, the question is,
What?
have you thought about how you can kind of help push getting our application through and getting a ruling on it, and so we can start getting access to the program? What can we do? What can you do to help us get through that decision? We don't want it to go on somebody's desk and sit there for 6 months.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, we've been, you know, we had obviously our meeting, you know, I guess about a couple months ago now. So we've got this on the radar screen of folks, you know, in the Office of Secretary. We can make sure, you know, once that's all, you know, buttoned down and we know it's with headquarters for signature, we can make sure, you know, we flag that. We've been in constant communication throughout this whole, you know, back and forth and process with the delegation. We know a number of them have weighed in, you know, with DOT, and it's on their radar screen down there. So we can just continue, you know, to the degree we hear that there's issues, we can certainly have folks weigh in again. And then once it's actually, you know, at the point where we're literally just waiting for the signature to go on it, we can flag it, and, you know, flag the urgency to get it done. You know, with
Well,
the politicals in the office of secretary.
Yeah, getting the design started is one thing. Getting it finished is the second thing. Getting the balance of the money that hits the 10/27 window for construction is the next piece, that if this thing takes too long, forces another year delay,
Yeah.
that's another $60 million to our program.
Yep. That was a,
So we gotta be educating these people that are making the decision
yeah,
that every time you delay, it's not free.
yeah.
But isn't it really the same for everybody? Every project they're working on is the same.
I understand, but I want to make sure
Well, the water,
we're getting our oar in the water.
the water window is the thing that makes this one a little bit unique. I mean, they're obviously not the only bridge over waterway like that, but that was a big part of our message when folks were back here a month or so ago, and we communicated that to everybody. We'll make sure we circle back if we start to see any slippage, and what we hope is we're heading towards getting a signature on this. So
Yeah,
we'll make sure that's a big, losing a year is time is money, and there's a big focus on trying to speed these projects through the environmental process. So it should be a receptive audience to this idea that shouldn't be bureaucratic delays that lead to another year of
Okay.
slippage and extra money.
well, we appreciate everything you're doing. Yeah.
So Jim, thanks for that distinction concerning the water window. The BIP, Bridge Investment Program, can someone remind me of what our plan is for?
We're gonna talk about that in the information section a lot.
Great.
So we'll brief you on it.
Wait.
Okay,
Sections ahead. Oh, he's always just a couple sections ahead.
how about partner updates? Anybody from Federal Highways, ODOT, WashDOT like to bring anything forward?
I know your lottery IGA is getting signed on our end. That's,
Ooh.
it is happening.
Thank you. For 20 million.
Positive news update.
Yes.
Marla just joined. Marla just joined.
Say again?
Marla joined.
Okay.
I think, does that prevent Ben from voting? Hey, Ben.
Yep, Ben, you're off the hook. Okay, let's, Mitzi, anything you want to bring up? The 106 or anything associated?
You mean the 106 going out to the SHPO
Yeah.
and DAP
Trying to
for
give you the-
signature? Yeah,
the
so that went
pedestal
out.
here.
And we also just found out today that we are going to go ahead and push the FEIS and ROD to cooperating agencies as soon as we get, there's one section that needs to be fixed. But other than that, it should be able to go to the cooperating agencies within before the 106 MOA gets signed.
Excellent.
Great
Excellent.
job. What a great Monday.
Yeah. Let's just make Friday really good. Everything gets signed.
Misty, if it's going to the cooperating agencies, what does that set us up for timeline on actual signature?
Good question. I just don't know. It's just like a black box of we put it in for signature and then we just don't know. So
Yeah, I think Christie's going to give us a little bit of a briefing there. There's some real unknowns, as Misty said, as far as turnaround time. Some of these guys we can push, a lot of them we can't.
These are all
Right.
state agencies or federal, with the cooperating agencies, I forget.
Mitzi, who are the cooperating agencies?
we have Army Corps, we have Coast Guard. I can't remember the other ones, but those are the two big ones. And I know that they are not going to be able to, it'll take them the full 30 days to review, which at one point we had thought maybe we could ask them for a shorter review period because they've already seen it before. But now that they've lost so many staff members like we have, it's just, we really can't ask them.
Well, we could ask them.
We could ask them.
We want
You're
to have
right.
that side though. So let's, yeah.
We're nice.
Okay. Thank you, Missy.
Thank you, Misty.
Okay, going down. Any other partner updates? Okay, let's move on to consent agenda, the invoice approval.
Mr. Chairman, I'd make a motion to approve the consent agenda.
I will second.
No, I can't.
Second, say, we're there.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Passes. Okay. Committee reports, funding and finance. Grant.
I'll be brief. We discussed the ongoing talks and developments on the phase 1B discussions. The other things that have been previously discussed includes the lottery bond signing, the Oregon transportation package, the updated BIP, which we'll talk about later, infra, et cetera, rolling over Washington State DOT grants into next fiscal years. So we can have access to spend that money in the timeline in which will be authorized to spend it. One other ask and request that we have from us is we have a task with Moss Adams. Recently, they merged. And so we need to, well, it's been requested of us that we recognize that they merged with Baker Tilly.
What does that look like? Is that a document?
Us.
Yeah, it's in the package.
Yeah. So for legal reasons, it would be good to have it in the minutes and a motion that we recognize that and consent that indeed they did merge. So, yeah. So that way, everything that so basically in a nutshell, everything that we agreed to with Moss Adams, we can also agree with their new merged entity.
That's going to be coming up here shortly.
Did they invite us to the party?
There's a party?
There should be. There's not a party. I don't know.
There's not.
It happened on June 5th.
Oh, it's kind of pushy to ask us to write them a nice letter if we weren't invited.
We recognize that they changed their name.
Okay.
I was not invited nor received any invitation to a party. Maybe you did. Check your mail. So the easiest way to do that is just to make a motion. I brought up a motion. We can do that. So I'll just do so. I'll move.
It's on the thing right here.
Great. If somebody else would like to do it, right?
You want to do it now? I'm just following the agenda.
We can do it now if you'd like.
I would do it now while you're talking.
While we're talking about it.
Making sure. Reading my Oregon law.
Is he actually write something up for that?
Yeah.
Yes, under new business, A9A4.
If you have it in front of you, go for it.
What page is it?
22, I think.
Yeah.
What's it? Sometime in between 22 and 36.
Like 40.
During the meeting, I wrote down what I wrote down, and I didn't write down the official. Okay. Yeah. I would move to acknowledge that Moss Adams LLP is engaged with a merger with Baker Tilly, and HRWSBA and Bridge Authority will continue to engage with the merged entity.
Yeah.
Second.
I'm on page 35.
Yeah. Thanks.
So we have a second. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? None? Okay, motion passes. Thank you.
So Mike, I'm gonna forward this email from Moss Adams for you to sign. It's a
We can do it right here after the meeting.
electronic sign that whatever you call it. You have to do it on the computer. AccuSign.
Hey, anything else from funding and finance?
We just talked about doing the motion, and so I did the motion. There we go. Done.
How about there's an outstanding request from the county for reimbursement of legal. We just mentioned where we are on that.
Still working on that letter. We received a letter from the county. Still working on that.
Okay.
Still working on getting clarification on exactly what it was and saying.
So the request there is for us to reimburse the county for some legal expenses on an application. And I know you're going back and forth with the county, but there's a number there that we may
Something along those lines, yes.
And just as a reminder, I'm recused on that.
Yep.
So I take it that's Hood River County.
I've heard,
Just connect the dots.
I've heard some noise, but people have been nice enough to leave me out of it.
Okay, engineering committee, Eric, do you want to, did you get the notes?
Yeah, that was great. Thank you.
Yeah, I've got some notes. So we had fairly abbreviated, well, wasn't abbreviated, but we talked about just a few topics. I think the one we spent the most time on was really a discussion about membership in the Pacific Northwest Waterways Association. And we came away from that. It's something we've looked at before. It's really an organization that's a little bit different in their mission than what we are, but it is tangentially related. And I think our action on that is we're going to try to just set up a conference call to chat with them a little bit about what they do and how we would fit into that and go from there. We looked at financial trends on overall costs, rolled that into cost saving efforts and trying to get some of that lined up as we prepare to get going on 1B. Where do we start? What do we look at for cost savings and how do we track some of that? 1B, jump in here, Catherine, if you got it, because
I was actually late to the meeting. I was 30 minutes late, so I missed the Pacific Northwest Waterway Association discussion. We talked about the 1B quite a bit. I mean,
1B,
the major.
And where we are on that is ongoing negotiations. We're in pretty good shape on cost. And maybe a few days out of current, but looking on contract language and how we end up on that. And I think there was kind of a sidebar in there, some of the cost reductions and that sort of thing, and what we start to look at and hope we can get at. Talked about grant funding, which we've already done here. Go ahead.
So the Pacific Northwest Waterways Association, do you folks have a recommendation to us on that, or was it just this?
We don't have a recommendation. We're just looking at, so there's a cost associated with it, and we're trying to get just a phone conversation to understand how we would plug in and what the benefits are. And
that has been scheduled. I forget when it is.
25th.
Okay, and then the 1B discussion is last I heard, the question was whether they would be willing to do a design that they weren't guaranteed to be the company constructing it.
Yes.
And where is that?
We're still discussing.
Still part of a discussion, and I think where we are is a lot of lawyers are looking at it, and we're waiting for final language.
We put the challenge out.
Do they understand what our goal is?
Yes.
And we understand where they are.
Yeah.
And we put a challenge out, and I'm glad to see that James is on the phone. I would really, really like to see we got an agreement principle by this Friday. I think we're close enough. We can get there. So we've been dealing with this now for a couple of months. Let's get this thing behind us. Yeah, Marla, you got a question? You're on.
Hi, guys. A little bit on the same lane of where Arthur's question was, but for those of us that are not on that committee, I would like to ask that you guys clearly state what our position is that you're negotiating for, just so we're all clear and there's no misinterpretations.
Yeah, so you're talking about the Kiewit or the Pacific Northwest?
Kiewit, what are the terms that the authority right now is negotiating on for what we want to see as part of phase 1B to reach a price?
Yeah, so in a nutshell, there's a lot of fine detail behind it, but in a nutshell, we want to protect the authority's ability that if we cannot reach an agreement on price on phase 2, we can put a design out on the street that was completed in phase 1B such that it's a complete design, 100% done, signed off, calculations, the whole works. That's what we want. from that. It is our goal that we don't want to have to go out on the street in phase two. We want to use a progressive design build as we originally intended. And we want to make sure that we can get a deal on phase two and Kiewit go ahead and finish the job. If we can't get a deal, we want to be protected that allows us to go outside. Now, Kiewit is also looking at, from their point of view, they want to be careful on liability. So they're trying to get language in there on length of liability should they not be awarded construction. So we've got the lawyers and we've got HNTB looking at all of that to make sure that we're not doing something outside the norm of the industry.
And so I would think that the concept of how long liability would attach to this would be something that would be relevant for in any circumstance, because of the fact that we do not yet have a plan which funds construction.
Sure.
Correct. Okay.
Yeah.
So this isn't the new concept.
This is not a new issue. It's just putting some fine points to what people really want.
What was new, the way it was characterized to us earlier was that they were not interested in being liable for a design if they're not building it.
Yes, and that has changed.
And that has changed. So that's what I think Marla and I were not aware that had changed. Yeah. So it's good to have that understanding.
Yeah, we don't have it in writing yet. Yeah, that they're going to. So I would say we're headed in a direction that it looks like we can get there until we have a signature on it.
Great.
But from what I can see, all parties want this to move forward.
Excellent.
And it's been this would
So
be,
just to be clear, so the position of the commissioners, and this committee is working this through on all of our behalf, is that we are firm that any phase 1B for this project is delivering 100% fully signed, sealed designs.
Correct.
Because otherwise taxpayer money would be potentially used.
Yeah, I don't see any
different
point for us, right? It's not like it's not like you just go sort of hedge on it and have a design that's partly buildable.
No, we're we want to make sure that is of utmost integrity there as well. 100%.
Okay.
So a couple more topics we went through, bridge monitoring system for the existing bridge. One of the things we've been discussing is about having a system in place so we can have a year of data to fall back on. This is really a safety mechanism to make sure that we don't cause something to happen to the existing bridge that renders it unusable before the new bridge is complete.
So can you tell me, is the concept of weather monitoring also attached to this bridge monitoring? Yes. So that would be more than just for safety data. That would be for informing the construction project.
That is forward.
Yes. So it's weather monitoring, it's movement of the bridge, and I think we also have a water level monitor so we can track that data. Right. And all of that is time correlated, so that you can see if there's a cause effect there that is causing something on the bridge or not, or if it's inert to that and happens whenever. It becomes a data set to use. We want it to have it to inform not only the design, but also used during construction.
So the port installed a water, a level gauge 8 years ago or something. It's been there for a while now, right? So we don't have to do that again, or we can access their data, right?
I don't know that.
To look into that and see what their accuracy of their data.
That hasn't come up in our discussions.
Yeah.
Oh, so you were going to do your own gauge?
Yeah, we were going to do our own gauge.
Okay, because I know that they became an official gauging site for BPA 6-8 years ago, something like that.
No, so, nobody mentioned that.
It's the first time I've heard of that.
They're collecting data. It's interesting. We had a number of discussions.
See, you just have to invite a historian.
I don't know.
We'll double check. I could be totally imagining this.
Kevin, is that something you're aware of? I've never heard of that.
There used to be a monitor in the marina that checked river levels, but that was discontinued about 18 months ago due to the cost. It's about $6,000 a year. But there isn't anything on the physical bridge.
I didn't know
But
that.
anyway, there is an IGA floating around between us and the port. I believe, Kevin, you're going to bring that up at the meeting on Tuesday?
That's my goal. We're going back and forth, trying to get everything clarified, but that's the goal.
Yeah. So we would like to get this thing installed on the bridge by the end of the month. So we can start tracking, these levels and so on through the course of the heat of the summer.
And so this is basically a telemetry package that gets attached to the bridge, and the port allows us to attach it.
Right.
And then we have the data. And the question I think I asked when someone raised this to me a little while ago was who owns the data?
We do.
So we own the data.
The Hood River White Salmon Bridge Authority owns the data, not the port.
Correct.
Yes.
Okay.
So the bridge authority owns the equipment and the data. Now, would we share the data with the port? I would certainly hope we would.
Public record.
Yeah.
Well, that's what I'm asking about. And I especially want to understand because it's possible that this data generates knowledge that the bridge is about to fall down, right? I mean, just to say something. So having some process in place.
If it shows that the bridge is about to fall down, the bridge is in the process of falling down on this data.
So there's no safety mechanism. The port decided not to add anything additional. This is specifically for certain things.
We had discussions with the port engineering to maybe add some instrumentation to this package that we could give back to the port, but the port elected not to add this data. Because I believe, Kevin, your HDR said that they don't really see a need or a use for the information.
Yeah, ODOT during their biannual inspections have never requested that we have.
Okay, so I'm confused. So I thought that the purpose of this was that when we are constructing the new bridge, we want to know that the actions of constructing the new bridge are not in any way causing disruption to the old bridge.
That's correct. But it will not tell you passively whether or not there's things going on with the bridge that could damage it in non-construction periods.
Yes.
Okay, so it's telling you whether there's any motion that is detected at that
or
point.
whether that motion is at a level that would cause concern. It's just simply going to tell you based on the temperature movements and weather movements throughout the year, what the existing bridge is doing. But it's not going to weigh that against any kind of like criteria that says, hey, if it moves X, then
it's going to give you raw data.
Yeah.
Okay, but there was the option of adding instrumentation to this so that we would have knowledge of the stresses on the bridge from operations.
That's correct.
Or the port engineer. You used the acronym, which I assume was engineer.
No, HDR is the company.
HDR is the company.
Oh, okay.
Their engineer said
It's
no,
actually
thank you.
not an acronym, I don't think.
It's actually
their company name.
it sounds like an acronym.
It's like TV, it's not really an acronym.
Okay, so the port's engineering company has said they do not see a value to that.
Correct.
Okay.
And they don't see a value based on the Oregon State ODOT bridge inspections and their reports from that. There's nothing there that indicates the bridge needs any heightened inspections from what they've seen or anything like that. So they looked at it, they evaluated it. There's nothing that indicates that's necessary. So they chose not to. And it would have added significant cost as well. So
correct.
So again, what we are going to monitor is that if you think about drilled shafts or pile driving, we'll probably do a pile driving test study to see with this instrumentation, are we causing any movement back on the bridge by driving piles? And that gives us some engineering information of doing something alternate if we have to. So that's one piece of it. The second piece of it is gaining an understanding of how that bridge moves through the course of the year, and also wind and everything else will help influence how the bridge gets built.
Right. Yeah, I'm certainly not in a position to challenge the port's engineer on any of this. I just wanted to understand what it is what are the limits of what we're doing? And that kind of would inform the question of what are the obligations to inform. But I hope that the legal agreement, though, in some way does address that, because I think it is I hope that I expect that it will never be an issue, but I would like to be sure that everything's in writing as to, the simplest thing, to make sure that the port always has access to data and that their engineers can review it as they wish. So it's not our responsibility to worry about whether this shows something regarding their bridge.
Yeah, there will be the way I understand it, there will be a dashboard available, and that dashboard, the authority can choose to share who they want to share it with.
Right.
And I believe all those concerns are things that we've talked about in reference to the IGA. So I think you're right. And you're right. It's a data set. And I think how it gets used is really up to the port and up to the bridge authority. And it provides different functions for each of us. So
I'm just looking to see what is on, because that presentation he and his team did for us about what the equipment does and does not do is so informative. But I don't believe he is on. Yeah, he was on earlier. He's here.
I think we've
beat
pretty well covered this.
Kristen, but is there questions? I mean,
these
are all questions
for this meeting. That's enough. I just want to know that it's on the record that the liability discussion was had, and it will be in the legal discussion. When we see a contract, we can talk about it.
Yep.
The data sharing is pretty important to ensure that we have the legal right to do so. You know what I mean?
I'm thinking the opposite, that we're not creating a liability for ourselves because we have data that they don't have.
Yeah. So we talked about coming up with a recommendation on that, but I don't think we have the final kind of details of it yet. The IGA is going.
We're trying. I'm trying to push this a little bit because the port has one meeting in June, and it's a week from tomorrow.
Yeah.
So it'd be really good if we could get this thing.
The IGA.
IGA.
Yeah. Ours is the following week on the 23rd.
Whose court is this? Who's
Kevin's working on it.
okay. So
yeah.
Great.
I had discussions this today.
Yeah. He talked about it.
Marla has her hand up.
Oh, yeah, Marla.
You're on mute.
You're on mute.
Especially with the timeline that was just shared. Shouldn't we all be seeing that draft? Because if the goal is to be in receipt of a signed version from the port, we're not really allowing for feedback from the full authority. We're instead setting the authority up to receive a signed agreement from the port, and then we're accepting it or we're delaying it. So it seems like in the interest of efficiency, we should have been reviewing that draft in today's meeting. So the authority was going in with confidence that they've negotiated the terms we want to see, and the port's considering that. Right now, they'd only be considering a draft from a committee.
We didn't write that. Our committee didn't write that.
No, I know, but who's seeing it? I'm just curious. I'm confused as to how we can be trying to put something on an agenda with a different government agency next week when this is our only official meeting and we have seen nothing and we've not released an action to move that forward for signature by the partner.
It sounds like it's the opposite. It's the port's document that the port wrote, and the port commission.
So the port is
going to get a
authoring.
chance to vote on it.
Thank
And
you.
then they will hand it to us.
Yeah.
Right.
I haven't seen it. Yes, I don't know. I think so.
And legal counsel
Our
reviewed it.
legal looked at it. They're going back and looking at it, then it'll come to you all.
Thank you. Sorry, I just kept hearing our legal team, so I drew the incorrect.
I was confused too.
I may have misspoke. So.
Yeah, it's all Eric's fault.
Eric Washington.
So I guess the two other pieces of this, one, this is money that comes out of phase 1A that we are still spending to cover this. And it's something shy of about 600,000 to get the system purchased and installed.
And then
it has to be state money, because if it's federal money, then it federalizes the bridge.
one other important part of this too is that it will be transferred ownership of the equipment, of the monitoring and everything over to the authority. So the authority will own, like Kiewit's not going to monitor it for you. Are going to assign they're going to get it in place, get it running, and then turn it over to you.
So Kiewit will make sure it gets installed properly, and then turns it over to us, which I'm assuming we're gonna have HNTB as our agent do the reading,
And
since we don't have any permanent employees.
there'll be a maintenance plan part of that where you'll have a maintenance. We're not gonna go out and fix it. There'll be a maintenance company of who builds it and everything else. And
Are we looking at every pile on this 600,000, every pier?
I believe, yes, they put equipment on every pier. Yes.
And so
Does this seem a little excessive to spend $600,000?
No, we went through that and
It did to me when we started, and by the time we were done, I was convinced.
okay.
So is this always part of phase 1A or is this an additional cost
This
coming in?
was added in as part of that extension work. When we extended Kiewit's contract, it was brought in as part of that discussion. So yeah, it was gonna be a part of 1A was to monitor the bridge.
But it's something that the authority is asking or wanting, not Kiewit, in order to inform design.
Correct.
That is correct.
That is correct.
So I thought, my understanding was that
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 was
was
the
something that
baseline.
became important when we understood that the current bridge is resting on gravel. That we did not foresee this when the current bridge was thought to be into bedrock, but that now with the change in construction techniques that have been necessitated by the same forces that caused us to change the construction techniques also cause us to want to be more informed about the motion of the current
I
bridge.
think it increased the concern. We probably would have always said you should go out and monitor the bridge to know what it's doing, just in case. Even if it was sitting on bedrock, but the heightened concern was when we found it wasn't in bedrock, that vibrational impact increases the potential. So we want to know when they go out and start doing that work, is it really impacting it?
So Kevin's not going to just sit there and look at the video camera and see if the camera gets whacked like he did when the truck hit it.
Yes.
Okay, so this is going to be finer degree than that. I'm kidding.
But there will need to be some judgment calls when data changes to determine whether it is a concern or not a concern.
And is this wired or wireless telemetry?
It is solar, it's in wireless.
Wireless.
Yeah. Yes.
Okay. Any other items you want to bring up from the?
Scared now.
Mike, is there something you can share with all of us that gives some detail about how it's being spec'd and the?
Yeah, yes, we can give you I'll send the proposal out to all the members.
So we also spent a little bit of time talking about an independent bridges inspection beyond what ODOT does, and whether that would provide value or need. And I think we shied away from that. We talked about that maybe being something that we come back to and talk about in addition later on before we actually get started on inspection.
It's the reason to do that.
Just to have a third party kind of assessment of what's there. ODOT's been doing the inspections. They believe their 2-year cycle is adequate. Do we need a third? And I think it was just like you brought up. If we go ahead and do that, does that start to create more liability for the port and ourselves that doesn't provide a lot of value?
Enough on is, why would the bridge authority need to perform an inspection of the old bridge, which is not our bridge?
Behind that, Arthur, is like when you go to typically start construction, you'll go out and take a survey of like houses around you.
Right.
And you'll video them, especially if you're gonna do to prove that there was no crack in somebody's foundation before you started, because a lot of times, once you start construction, if you don't do that, everybody house that had a problem is now all of a sudden somehow you caused it.
Right.
So the thought is everybody comfortable with the inspections and the stuff that has been done on the existing bridge as the baseline information, right? And does the authority want their own baseline information to say, okay, we've done our own inspections. Yes, we think and agree that this is the right baseline information to protect your interests, or are you okay adopting the port stuff?
So
and it's kind of really up to you,
Which is
ODOT independently inspected, and it's probably fine and should be good, but it was just, do you want to do that?
So it was a discussion item. We didn't decide to kind of go one way or another, but it was just should we think about this, and then come back in a year and talk about it again. So I guess I'm trying to cover it because it's something we talked about, we went through, we decided to, those same questions you're asking, does that make sense? Does it do that, or why would we need that? We asked ourselves the same questions and said, okay, so let's let it lie for now.
Right, and I find myself needing to use an acronym without explaining it. The ODOT inspection says the bridge is a POS. So how does
So
so that would suggest that our need,
without any need for additional inspections.
right? Why would you need to go beyond that? Because what damage are you going to do to something that's?
So we kind of felt generically that the instrumentation we're putting on the bridge, on the piers, gives us enough information to kind of tell us we're either doing something to the bridge or we're not.
Right.
Now, the integrity of the bridge itself and how either weak or stiff it is, we're not looking at.
Right.
That's
right.
Part of the liability that
we have.
And the reality is that the ODOT inspection done in cooperation with the port, there's all sorts of things that it can't know. They don't know the integrity of the concrete at the lower levels of the.
They don't know what's going on inside the steel.
They don't know what they don't know.
Right. So, and we wouldn't be able to get any further insight into that.
Unless you spend a lot of money.
I just want to, I think this helped me.
No,
I'm happy.
I mean, it's the same kind of discussion we had. It's, well, what's the benefit of that? Why?
I appreciate that. Thank you.
There is a future discussion that'll be coming back to you related to this, and that is related to the demo of the old structure. So because the old structure, there is no model or anything fully understood about the old structure. There needs to be one developed before they start tearing it apart.
I can show you the photos of which show the lack of rebar.
Which is the reason why they need to do
it shouldn't be interrupted by much steel.
So before they go taking parts off, right, they want to know what's going to happen when they take that part off. Right. They'll want to build a model, and there may be some advantage to building that model earlier than later. So that'll be something else that's still kind of been being thought about. That'll probably eventually come back to you to decide if you want to do it.
So if we had a model now, and if we decided we wanted to do it as part of this instrumentation package, you could go out there and put stuff like strain gauges on the critical members and start to get maybe some information of predictability. But we don't have a model that really shows the interrelationships of all these members. And if this one comes off, what happens to the ripple effect? Mike is right. We're going to have to eventually get a model put together for demolition. The question is, should we do it earlier than later? And is there something that we could use earlier with the port to give more predictability of the final issue with the bridge? But one thing that we got to keep in mind is that the port has committed to basically federalize a bridge as of July 1st, 2026. If we started that work early with this model, maybe with federal funds, that would cause the bridge to go federalized earlier, which I don't think we want to do. It has real bad
Okay, it sounds like you guys had a good conversation.
Yeah.
Marla's got her hand raised.
Yeah, Marla.
Hearing this conversation makes me think it might be a good time later this summer, especially when we understand the terms of Phase 1B, to set up a joint session with the Port of Hood River. I feel like there are many issues now that we need to lead on talking through in partnership with the port. Not just this conversation, because in my mind, there's some shared costs there that I would like to see. I don't think that burden should go fully on the new authority in terms of the modeling and work done to get more clarity on the old structure we may eventually be in charge of demolishing. But more critically, as we start to get a better sense of what our likely construction schedule is, I think we need to have that joint session so they can be in communication with us to plan more correctly what types of maintenance they might want to be factoring in for the long-term use of the bridge to whatever year that may be. And it would give us clarity on where they're tracking and what costs that might incur. But it just seems we might be reaching a point in the near future where we should be working better in coordination with that other body.
I sure like that idea. I think having both commissions on the same page, I'm sure they have a lot of questions of us. We have questions of them, and throwing stuff back and forth between meetings is, it's nice to occasionally have a joint meeting.
I think we should set that up.
Set it up for early fall.
Evan, I'll follow up with you on that.
We should set that up.
I would suggest we get into 1B, so we know what 1B schedule is and we get the funding for it. And probably the next one is partway through 1B when we know what the real construction start's going to be for 2.
Yeah. Yeah, there's right away things that we need to talk through. There's other stuff. So probably August, September.
Yep, that'd be great.
Right time frame.
Okay.
I think the last thing, there's a letter here in our packet that Tiffany, I don't remember the name, and we discussed that letter a little bit as it relates to the 6F conversion. I think that's somewhere else on the agenda.
Yes.
So I'll let that one go. Wow. Sorry. You had a schedule, I blew it, I'm sure.
Okay, how about communications? I didn't see. Yeah.
Or I'll tee it off, and Jake, and I think Noah, if he's on, may jump in. But Senator Merkley's staff, some of their staff was here. Some of our Oregon commissioners were part of that visit a week or so back on the 29th. We're working right now and have a draft going back among our group of a release anticipating the release of our infra funding. So when that is final, we'll share it with everyone for awareness. I know that our staff is about to be in the thick of the 2026 BIP application. So I just want to flag or remind that part of that process is getting the draft application over to the communications committee for a review before we're bringing it to the full authority for approval to submit. I think the applications already route their way over to engineering and finance, but the comms committee should be a part of that as well. We have yeah, go ahead, Mike.
I said nobody's seen them yet. We still are drafting.
I imagine there's much work to be done before it's ready for the committees to review, but I don't think we followed that process in the fall for the BIP. So I'm just flagging, I think, as we are putting all our eggs in the basket of one of these, the 25 or 26 cycle, I'd like to make sure we're true to that intended process. And then our committee meeting is this upcoming Wednesday. And Jake, I don't know if there's anything you want to add. There was also a meeting with our team at MSH and Summit last week to further strategize some messaging. And I think this summer we'll definitely be working on what the advocacy plan will be around the 2026 BIP application through that cycle once it's submitted in August.
No, you nailed it. Nothing to add.
So maybe I missed it, but the process on the announcement on the infra contract.
I'm going to walk through all those during the informational.
Okay, so that's not more or less.
Okay. On all of them, where they are and what
Yeah, we're just getting the appreciation drafted and securing quotes from our federal team, and then we'll reach out. We'll have a commissioner quote in there as well and staff quote. So we're just getting that at the ready, so it's good to go.
Thanks.
Okay, let's move on if we can. Let's go to new business action items. Public budget hearing is, yeah, there she is. Debbie.
Hi, can you guys hear me okay?
Yep.
Yay, okay. I never know with Zoom. Yeah, so the budget committee met, discussed the proposed budget, went through and made a few changes. Those changes are reflected in the resolution that is in front of you. But that should, for all that we know right now, that should be sufficient. If it is not sufficient, there are processes for changing the budget during the year, and if we need to do that, we certainly will. But this would cover, this was actually a bit higher than even the estimates of cash spend for the year. So we put a little extra in there to give you a bit of a cushion. But again, if with this funding freeing up, if it does indeed lead to what we assume will be a higher spend rate, then we can certainly come back and adjust the budget during the year. But for now, I think that this is probably it's a good budget to move forward with. So this is what was approved by the budget committee. And so now under Oregon budget law, it's time for the commissioners to adopt it unless there are changes that you see that need to be made.
Remind me what our fiscal year is again? Is it July to July?
Yeah, July 1 to June 30.
Sure.
And so just to remind people, because it gets a little confusing sometimes, the fact that there's a lawful appropriation doesn't mean that the money can be spent. It can only be spent if doing so would not result in a deficit, right? So it's okay to do what Debbie described.
We've pumped in a little bit more contingency.
You can leave some space in there, but we can't authorize the actual expenditure of that at the.
It's there.
What's that?
Until the money's there.
Yeah, the money has to be there to actually spend.
Yeah, just because it's allocated does not mean it's being spent.
Right.
Correct. You cannot deficit spend. Unlike the federal government, you cannot deficit spend.
Darn it.
They have a motion.
You need to have a public hearing first.
Yeah.
Oh, yes, please open the public hearing and see if there's any public comment, please.
Yes. Can we do that? Can we open?
We have to say the magic words.
Yeah.
Oh,
At this time, we are being public hearing. 294.
doesn't say. I don't have that.
Debbie, do you have the text to what we're supposed to say to convene the public hearing?
I think that technically all you have to do is say that we're having, this is the public hearing for the 2025, 2026 annual budget that will, for the fiscal year beginning July 1, 2025. And then ask if there's anybody currently either in the room or online that wants to give any testimony regarding this.
And assume I just said that. Does anybody have any comments or input to that document?
Testify. Does anyone wish to testify?
Does anyone wish to testify on the budget? I see no hands up.
This hearing is closed.
And then we'll close the public hearing of this. And can I have a motion to pass?
I move that we approve the fiscal year 25-26 budget as submitted in resolution 2025-3.
Have a second?
Second.
All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Marla, did you say aye? You had your.
I unmuted and I said aye.
Okay, thank you. Okay, motion passed.
Do we need to say, Debbie, that we're not levying any taxes? Or is that something that?
That's only for.
No, we don't have to call it out. If we had a tax levy, then we would need to specify it. But since there is not a tax levy, you don't even need to address that.
Great, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, if we could, let's move to agenda item 9AII. And this is a staff report for motion to audit services contract task order number 1.
Yeah, so in February, the board authorized to procure the third-party auditor for the fiscal year for 3 years. And then we went out and get the process done, and Clear Trail was the highest ranked, highest qualified form. And then we are issuing a task order number 1. which is the financial statement audit for 2024-2025. So the contract amount is $150,000 for 3 years, and the first task order is $35,000.
When do you see that they will have the first task order done?
It is starting in June and then finishing in December.
And just as a reminder for everybody, our audit this year is pretty simple, but we're trying to set ourselves up properly. So we went through the entire process.
Not a headache later.
So it's not a headache later, and these folks are highly qualified. Many of us have worked with them in other audits, and we will be on good, solid footing, and it will make Debbie's job easier, hopefully.
Thank you.
The discussion? Can I have a motion?
I move to award audit services, the audit services contract and task order number 1 to Clear Trails CPAs.
A second.
In favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. Thank you. General Counsel Services Agreement Amendment and Extension.
The current general counsel contract with Foster and Garvey and Dakotas expires in August 20th, 2025. Our initial contract has an option to extend it for one time for 2 years. So we are extending its contract for another 2-year term until August 2027.
Discussion?
I just want to point out, I'm just really happy with how this has been working out. I think we've been getting the legal advice that we need, and it's, I was a little nervous about something spread across the country like it is, but it seems to work just great.
Other discussion? If not, could I have a motion?
Move to amend and extend general counsel services agreements.
In a second?
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
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 Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. The last one we hear is Moss Adams and Baker Tilly merger acknowledgement.
Did that already though.
We already did that one. That's right. Okay, let's move into informational items, and Mike, I'm gonna let you
All right,
take this over.
Christy, are you on? Yes, she is. All right, so once a month, Christy, probably the first meeting of the month, Christy's gonna give you an update on where we are with the ROD, the FEIS, the Section 106 MOA, all that good environmental stuff that we're working on.
All those good acronyms.
Yes.
I'm gonna share here.
She's gonna, and Christy's not gonna use acronyms.
Oh, challenges, yeah.
Let's see, I wanted to share this, which is a list that we. Can you guys hear me okay? Yeah, okay. I wanted to share this list, which we are tracking. This is something that Mike thought would be, I think, a good for our group to mentally manage the number of steps that we still have to get to have the signed ROD. So where we've made progress this year, really good progress, in fact, and in April, as you all remember, we had the traditional cultural property approval 4F signed. And then we have been very active in the last month working on the Section 106 Memorandum of Agreement. And just last week, it went for a 10-day review to both state agencies. And what that's about is that the SHPOs are basically the final word in a way, because they regulate the historic property that the Memorandum of Agreement covers. The last time that anybody at either of the SHPOs, either Washington Department of Historic Property and Preservation, excuse me, or at the Oregon Department of Historic Processes saw this was October of last year. They had several comments, and what this review cycle is, these next 10 days, is just for them to see that their comments were responded to and give the nod that will enable FHWA and all the other signatures to sign the agreement. So we're hoping very soon we'll be checking this box off. And I thank everybody who pitched in the last month in the discussion about just what the last bit of detail should be in the memorandum of agreement, which was really on the authority side. And I think we resolved all the outstanding discussion quite adequately. So very close to that one. You can see the other list of things. I know earlier today a question came up about who the cooperating agencies are under NEPA. And I think it's important to remember who they are, because not only are they cooperating, but they're also agencies that will continue to have a role as we move through permitting in the next phase. So I think Misty mentioned the BIA, Bureau of Indian Affairs. WashDOT is a cooperating agency, which is really important to this project. The Army Corps of Engineers, and then the Coast Guard, of course, because of the navigation channel. So those are the 4 large agencies who will look at this at the FAIS in the next few months and give their nod of approval. And yeah, we're hoping that goes fairly fast. A lot of back and forth with new staff. Any questions about that?
Ability, they have a 30-day review cycle, correct?
It's standard practice to give them 30 days. It's not a regulatory requirement. So we'll see how it goes. We can ask for a shorter period of time. We may or may not get it. Right now, we do not know the project manager at the Corps, nor do we know the project manager at the Coast Guard. Both of those agencies have notified FHWA in the last 2 months that their previous project managers are no longer on the project. So we do have a change in staff to hear about, and hopefully they'll manage that effectively. We're very lucky that FHWA has been proactive. They sent an email about 2 weeks ago to each one of our cooperating agencies' point of contact. And that's one of the reasons we know up-to-date information about who their internal project managers are. So the cooperating agencies at this point have been informed that the document is coming their way, and we expect as efficient a review as possible. The FEIS ROD is very short relative to most EIS documents, so that's one thing in our favor.
And Christy, we're going to offer to meet with them in person as well, correct?
Oh, great.
Yep. Yes, we have a collection of information about what has changed. The last time the agencies saw this document was in October of 2022. So it's not new to them as an agency, but unfortunately, the 22 review was not a decision-making review process. So there's not new people coming on board will have to be reinformed and hopefully for a decision this time. The last thing on this table is this number 10, which is this USDOT, which is referring to the Washington side of transportation. They have a review cycle that was implemented by the current administration that's an unknown duration. It's a requirement. FHWA has not moved the document to Washington's, the Secretary office for that review, and we don't have a standard duration. So it's still out there. It's the largest of the unknowns we have on our schedule. And are there any questions about this list? Because if there aren't, I'll share the schedule.
I have one question. So ODOT is not listed as a cooperating agency. What's the proper terminology for ODOT's role in this?
ODOT is really the facilitator for the project to FHWA. Because when the project NEPA started, the Port of Hood River didn't have standing as a federal entity. So you need someone who has that relationship, and that was ODOT. And so they've maintained that relationship all the way through the NEPA process.
And so their assent to it is presumed because of that role.
Say that again?
Their assent to this document is presumed because they played that facilitator role.
Continue to be a facilitator, absolutely. And if anything changes in the project and further NEPA is required, they'll continue to be the conveyance through to the federal agency.
Got it. Thank you.
Welcome. I have
Okay.
just a second. I would like to share the overall project schedule just a little bit. I know this is a little scary, but I think it's important that we track this as a team as things move forward and also realize the progress that we're making. Right away, we can close this big blue box because in April we signed the NEPA reeval or
Hey, Krista, your screen didn't
So-
change. Can you reshare?
I can try. Let's see. Zoom is always a bit of a challenge. There we go. Let's see if this helps. How's that look? Nope, try again.
Okay.
I see the problem. Got it. There's two
I'm not
buttons.
sure what you're trying to edit.
You're good. Go ahead. Can you zoom in a couple and then you're good?
Yeah. Let's see if we can make this a little bigger. Yeah, it's not letting me. Let's not worry about the details. Hopefully you can read the red letters and don't worry about this too much. What I wanted to say was that NEPA reeval was signed so we can close something here and not have to look at that ever again. We're here in the NEPA final EIS ROD down in this box. All the blue is done. This box is FHWA has the administrative draft and they've had it since April. And what has been really holding up the process, I'm going to scroll down now, is that we've been working on the section 106 MOA. And so last week we were able to close off this box and completed the authority's legal review of the section 106. And now this was what I mentioned when we started, that DAPI and SHPO have this document. So that's driving the schedule up here, right here. So we added a bunch of dates to this box because we haven't moved on it. And assuming that we will get some motion, as Misty said, that they have been reviewing it. Now that the 106 is out, we can move forward with this. We hope to see it this week. It'll come back to us for review and then we'll be able to trigger the cooperating agencies. So kind of going back to where that other list was here. But the important thing I think is this gold line here. We're now out into September for signature, and that's unknown because of the line here that's in red, which is the Chief Counsel Washington, D.C. review process. So hopefully that helps understand where we are now and a couple of the hurdles we have to get through in the next few months. One of the things you should take home is that we're making progress. It seems slow, but it's not nothing. And we've made some really significant progress this year. And there are not a lot of visible hurdles for further progress. It's just process right now. So a lot of these documents aren't changing. It's just sitting on desks to get someone's attention, getting signatures, and then going through the next gate until we get done.
I guess that red line is obviously, somewhat concerning, being that the process is an unknown process. Is there anything that our DC team can do to assist us in getting some clarity, at least on what the process is going to look like?
I think once it gets sent out, they can do that. FHWA, our Oregon division, is aware of it, and they're pushing on them to try to understand it. There is a chance that that'll get relieved because it's kind of a new thing that was brought in. Some of those are going away kind of gradually. So there is a hope that maybe it'll go away before we actually have to submit it to them.
So I mean, the
process
will be resolved by the time ours gets to their desk.
Yeah, or we won't need to send it to them because they've changed the process and allowed the region to make the decision, not having to go to DC. But we'll have to monitor that and see.
But I can also tell you guys, this whole process has been, in the last 4 years, we've made more progress in the last 4 to 5 months that it appears to me that we've been able to make in 4 years. So there's a lot of people that are working real hard from our federal partners and HNTB and Kiewit. It's going in the right direction. We just got to give it one last little shove to get it over the top. We're almost there.
Well, I mean, there's a big unknown here, though. So, it's our job to.
It goes into the black holes. And we got to figure out how can we help.
But it's only unknown because it's new and nobody's done it before. So it's new and we don't know about it. So we're creating a big scary thing and it may not be. So you can do that. Christy, I want to thank you for all the hard work that you've done and kind of tracking this and getting it to a point where we can see it. And I'm going to take your saying, it feels slow, but it's not nothing. I'm going to use that somewhere. Thank you.
You're very welcome. I want to bring up one more topic before we wrap, and that's, I think you're aware, most of the team is aware that last year, NOAA NIMFS, the National Marine Fisheries Service, or we often call the service, issued a biological opinion for the project, which the project absolutely need, and we're gloriously happy to have it. However, it has some problems. And we've been working over the last few months as a team to sit down with NIMFS, and NIMFS has there's a process, and NIMFS is overloaded and short of staff. But what we are doing now, the way that this is sort of hitting the ground, is in collaboration with ODOT, we're going to be going to NIMFS with this document I'm showing the cover of here called the 2025 Project Update. And we've been working on it since we had a preliminary meeting in the beginning of May with National Marine Fisheries Service liaison, who's actually a Federal Highways Administration employee, but her job is just to take FHWA projects to NIMFS. Her name's Cindy Callahan. We met with Cindy in the beginning of May and talked about the issues as a team and have come up with this process where we have this document. FHWA will weigh in. This is still draft, still on my desk. They will weigh in and also add their concerns and recommendations. And then we will go in the next probably 8 weeks, sometime before the summer's over, and try to sit down with the services and come up with how we move forward to fix the problems in the biological opinion. And to be very clear, some people along the way have been, oh, you know, you don't want to reopen it. You don't want to reopen it. This is not reopening. In the biological opinion, there's actually a condition that the federal highways will meet with NIMFS on an annual basis. And so that's why this is called the 2025 project update. This will be a slow process. So we won't hear anything this summer. It'll start this summer, and I would guess that it'll be around Christmas time. I'm hoping no later than that, where we'll start to see some resolution and exactly how this all comes together. What's important is that these changes and the sort of details of construction and demolition that are scripted in the biological opinion are straightened out before design is done, so that we know exactly what is required when the team gets in the water. So we do have a little bit of time, but not that much, because the information affects design. So our timing is just right on top of it. Hopefully through this process, we'll also be educating whoever is going to be tracking this project at the services, and they will be informed and an ally on the team through design and construction, because they understand the project. So this first effort is this update, which is really almost an educational process, if you would. So that's kind of it. I'd be glad to answer questions. That's all I have for today.
I think later on, we would ask you to come back and educate us on the target areas that you're trying to I guess the term is clean up on the current document. And then also a quick discussion on impacts of being able to clean this up. What does that do to us or for us in construction? And I see this as one element that, if it works out, could lead to some pretty healthy reductions of costs on our project.
There's possibilities of that, absolutely. My hope is that we might even be able to shorten the project in-water work windows by 1 year, which would be huge if that happens. Yep. It'll affect everything. But I don't know yet. What I'm lacking on my end is we still haven't had the opportunity to meet with the NIMF staff. So we have no idea where they are, whether they understand the difficulties in the the biological opinion as it stands, whether they're really proactive about helping us, or if it will be more of an uphill battle. I don't know.
Yeah, we can say though, this has been almost a year ago now, we did have some discussions that were very encouraging.
Right.
So I think we're walking into an area that there's some really neat possibilities here. No guarantee, but strong possibility. Good, thank you, Christy. Anything
Very well.
else? If not, let's move in. We're going to keep the schedule going. Second one is BIP infra funding update. Mike?
Yeah, so I'll do the infra first. We're in the process of updating our infra applications. You remember at the end of last year, we submitted our agreement to FHWA. It did not make it through the approval process before the change in administration. So we just got the agreement back about a week ago, roughly a week ago. So the team has been updating that with a very quick 14-day turnaround. So they're updating just the wording on it, cleaning it up, making sure it's all consistent with the new administration. And then that will be going back in today to FHWA for resubmittal.
That's the NOFO.
That is the infra grant. That is not the info. So the infra grant was the infra was what we were awarded back in January 5th. So that one will be going back in. The second one, which is the BIP application, there's two things going on with that. There is a fiscal year 25 BIP application that we're updating. That one is due on June the 16th. So we are aiming for submitting it by the end of this week. So the team is updating that. That one does not require any updates to our benefit cost or just some cleanup of some wording. So we're going through that right now to be able to get that cleaned up. And then there is a second piece of that, which is the fiscal year 26 application, which is due August 1st. That one will be more work because there is a new model to determine your benefit cost ratio that has new inputs. So we will need to go back through and update our project to fit within that new model.
Can you describe that a little bit?
What it's going to do is they modify the discount rate, and Carrie can jump in here, from 3% to 7%, which took our benefit cost ratio from being roughly 1.87 down to below 1. And that's just in how they are running the model. So we haven't gotten the model, but we're trying to replicate that. So what we're doing now is going back and looking at our benefits and making sure we're putting all of our benefits in there to offset that change in discount rate. You have to be at a 1 or above to be eligible, and a 1.5 or above to be highly recommended. So we're working to get that back above that 1.5. We're looking at some seismic benefits. We're talking to EMS and first responders to increase some of the benefits there, as well as some of the freight haulers, to try to increase some of the benefits there as well. So but the team's looking at that now to try to see how we can get back to that one.
One of the key things that we're going to have to watch out, that second one, is that right now, I think, Carrie, you're building it to a 532 million number. That assumes we get nothing off the first BIP.
Correct.
Hopefully that's not the case. So at some point in time before the August date, we're going to have to do a quick review and adjust that number.
If we hear back from the first one, but we have no idea whether we'll hear back from the first one before the second one is due. If not, we will submit them both for 532, and then we will adjust accordingly, amend it as we need to. Carrie, any other?
Unfortunately, though, yeah, I was just going to say, remember that the benefit cost ratio, which is really the key on these things, or at least it's a gate to entry. The benefit cost ratio is based on your total project cost, not the amount of the grant request. So, there's limited things that we can do to change the project cost. What we'll be looking at, as Mike mentioned, is to try to get the benefits higher. And to do that, we'll be a lot more aggressive in looking at the likelihood or the probabilities, and these are all, there will be justification for all this. We're not just pulling it out of the air, but a lot more aggressive in our assumptions regarding seismic risk. And as Mike said, looking for additional benefits in the emergency response, in particular EMS world, which we kind of discounted last time because we didn't need it. And it was something that we had to work pretty hard to get in. So we're going to do that hard work now and try to justify some additional benefits there. Again, the first order of business on the new BIP grant is the 2026 BIP grant is to get us above a 1 with this new discount rate of 7. That's really killing us. Then the next order of business will be to see if we can get over 1.5.
Yeah, and that discount rate isn't just to our project. That's a discount rate applied to everyone that's applied.
Everyone will have this. Everyone's going to have the same problem that we're having.
New administration.
No, I understand that, but you don't just like make up a number. It's a pretty radical.
Do you know what the basis was?
The monthly DOT, is anybody from this team besides for me attending the monthly DOT meetings that I've emailed you about?
Did they explain this?
Sorry?
Did they explain the discount rate?
No, so every month, I've gone for the past 2 months, it's led by Connor, who we met. Every month for the past 2 months, they've gone into new opportunities and NOFOs, and he mentioned this NOFO last time. And they talked about the new discount rate, and they talked about what their new priorities for safety. And so lane size increase is one of the huge ones that we need that's a huge one. So I don't know. I'm not telling you what to do, Carrie, obviously, but I'm just, it would be great if I've been sharing these, and I just think that, I can be on them, and then birth rate and marriage rate. And so those are new ways that they're increasing and looking at projects. It's a totally different metric system. And so it'd be really beneficial. The next one, I imagine, will be about this, because Connor mentioned the BIP NOFO coming out very soon, but he said it was only 4.9. He said it was 4.9 billion, not 9.6.
Yeah.
So I wonder if the 9.6 is the two together, the two BIP options, as opposed to just one or the other.
Correct.
So, Barry,
The
ping me and I'll
9.6 is
send
the
you the
total
invite.
program.
Correct. I think that's 9.6, and but he said specifically 4 point something, which.
So does the port's experience in the past calendar year with 2 accidents, either which could have caused serious, could have been worse and could have resulted in bridge closure, does that allow us to make a change in the remaining life calculation on the bridge, which is that's the key number, which could change everything, right?
Very well might, and we'll be looking at that. Fortunately, you don't have a lot of serious accidents on the bridge, which is the bigger driver, because lives are one of the biggest, what do I want to say, avoided lives lost is one of the biggest benefits you can have. And you don't have a history of fatal accidents on the bridge, thankfully. But we'll be looking at all of the little bits and pieces.
15 miles an hour.
Also, going back to Marla's point,
and fortunately for this one, we have some time to do a very thorough job. I wanted to just point out and make sure you all got what Mike said, that the revision to the 2025 BIP, which is due next Monday, we're going to be hoping to turn it in this Friday. That one does not require us to revise our benefit cost ratio. And so we are going into that, or we are remaining actually in that competition as a highly recommended project. What they've simply done is given us an opportunity, and this was optional on our part, but they've given us an opportunity to revise our 2024 application to reflect the new administration's priorities and to not talk about the old administration's priorities. So that's what we've mainly been doing is deleting some references that were priorities to the old administration and making sure that we're checking all the boxes with the new administration's priorities.
And then going back to Marla's point, because I know communications, if we are submitting this, although we are going through and keyword searching, I'm sure, for the common words like equity, et cetera, which I know we spoke about in this specific application, is communications committee going to have a chance to review this amended application prior to being submitted on Friday? Understand that the communications committee also this is a volunteer and it's gonna take some time to review. I don't want to speak for you, Marla, but is everybody, if we're making sure the communications committee is seeing it before we submit on Friday, if that's the goal?
No one has reached out to the committee. My focus has been on the 26 application, knowing that it's going to have a new formula. I'm not dismissing the 25, but I think there's so many other factors at play. Months back, I shared that audit of what the application had been and the words that I thought were more dialed with the past administration's priorities. And so I trust that staff has what they need to modify that appropriately. I think we should be letting the timeline drive that, and it is a tight turnaround. And if they're on track for Friday, I think we don't try to derail that by adding another layer into it.
Yeah, and we did share those with them earlier, the comments that you had provided.
The other thing I would flag, so the DOT meeting that Catherine mentioned, do we have anyone that's on staff is really, I think, who should be in that if they are getting into particulars about different programs. But I also imagine they'll have a separate webinar or primer on their 26 BIP. Have we gotten any kind of that information, Mike, from their distribution channels?
Other than the NOFO information that came out. But we'll
the other
check.
thing I would just flag, I'm not sure how they might work birth rate in, but Clickitat County has no labor and delivery. And so it is always difficult to get accurate numbers on what birth rate is for Clickitat County, which might oddly present as a curious dilemma if we're really having to identify that number for.
Well, I can help on that. Years ago, maybe like 15 years ago now, I had a discussion with the Providence Hospital CEO at the time, who was long since gone, but concerning their modeling, when they expanded their services, they did extensive modeling centered around their birthing center, because that's one of the major elements that they added to the hospital, and they expanded it in 2011, maybe. I forget the exact year. But what I remember from that era is that the hospital was designed with a birth rate about 3 times the birth rate of Hood River County by itself. So it was clearly designed as a regional center with the expectation that it would have clients coming in from Clickitat and Skamania counties.
I would think they should be able to tell you today.
No, it's more that there is a disconnect in the data that is the readout, the reporting back new residents into these cities in Clickitat County, and also just the lag that sometimes exists from when even the county's getting updated birth records.
Yeah, no, I completely
understand. On these grants, they want to rely on census data, which of course the most recent census, the 2020 data. And so we'll be looking at that certainly, but I would be interested as we start getting into the benefit cost analysis for the 2026 application. If you have sources, as as the two commissioners just said, if you have sources of people that might have some insight into these kinds of things, if we have to go out in the community and interview people, we'll do it to get this information.
Is fundamental to the financial well-being of our local hospital. So I am sure that their CEO is a source who you should speak to.
Fine.
Unfortunately, the CEO just retired last week, right? So we have a new one.
Yep.
So we will have a new CEO hopefully shortly.
I have a question how they calculate marriage rates. Is it by, let's say, since we're kind of like a destination place for people to get married, I would assume from what I hear around town. When you get married here, is it when they calculate marriage rates? How do they calculate marriage rates? Is my question.
Where you?
How
many rentals?
Is it the license?
Catherine, it tends to be census data. They tend to be looking for household count. Yeah. So how many households are married households? How many are single?
By their total residence is like a really good rate.
Guys, I'm going to close this off and keep going. Next item is committee chairs meeting.
We had brought this up at the last meeting. We were going to continue this discussion, and I guess I just wanted to hear back from the board. We talked about doing it an hour before or after this meeting. Is there consensus or discussion? Do we want to make that decision today, or we want to push this to the next meeting?
I would suggest that we set the goal of having this in effect by September 1st. That's my thinking, but I don't see adding another meeting or extending the meeting over the summer is likely to yield very much.
Okay.
But I would like to continue discussing it.
Do you want to make a decision today on before or after the meeting, or wait till September?
I'm
I
curious.
think we wait until we have our new leadership elected and a full board again. We've got a vacancy now. We're about to have another one. And I think we revisit our regular meeting time, and then let that determine and set up for a decision on whether it's before or after whatever that meeting time is.
Okay. Perfect. We will table that one till September.
Well, no.
No, I would say, yeah, like July or August, so that.
I was kidding.
You are not very funny.
Okay, let's keep going, guys.
Commissioner vacancies. This was just a general update of who has been, if anyone, working with the counties for the vacancies that are upcoming. And is there any actions you want the staff to be doing? Because we have not been coordinating with the counties.
Yeah, I have been doing the coordination for Hood River County. And we have on our agenda for next week to be addressing the anticipated vacancy. And we'll have more information on that shortly.
Okay. And what about Clerk County?
I'm going to reach out to the clerk of the board, and then I hope, is going to reach out to the cities to get their input as well.
I did say our meeting's next Monday, right? For commissioners,
Next
River
Monday.
County Board of Commissioners next Monday.
So there's no action for the staff. All right. Commissioners are handling that.
I think one of the things that we talked about last time when this came up is there something that we as the Bridge Authority ought to be talking about to influence what the county does, what the counties do?
Like what?
Is there a skill set that we feel that we need or would be beneficial, or a point of view that could be added to the group?
For our county, we've already closed the volunteer session. So we've taken applications already.
All right.
And we've also done the CFA, the Commission Formation Agreement, as it kind of lays out this whole process, and it requires consultation. In our case, we have to consult with the city of Hood River and with the Port of Hood River. And in your case, you have to consult with the two cities.
Okay.
West Hammond and Bingen. So
that opportunity is gone then.
It is for us,
but not for Washington.
Okay.
That I know of. I haven't checked in with them lately.
I mean, I could certainly pass along anything you want to say, but.
Well, we haven't had a group discussion on it, and I was just wondering if that was warranted.
Somebody who's worked at a large engineering firm probably for 30+ years would be nice. Who understands complex construction projects and working with contractors, but on multiple millions of dollars, that'd be great.
Or someone who wishes to fund the project themselves.
Yeah. We should, seriously, you're asking. So, yeah, I mean, that's.
There you go.
I think Elon's looking for a new job.
I think he has one. Yeah.
Well, I'd even name the bridge for him if he wants to pay for it.
Anything else on this one?
Wants to call the bridge Elon's Bridge.
I just say whatever's good name.
Okay.
Have enough fun with this one. Okay, next one is insurance renewal.
Yep. So the policy expires on July 1st. We're working on a quote to bring back to you. So work on getting that to you.
But there's not any problem here, is there?
The agent thinks there is no significant changes in terms of the premium or anything.
Good.
Bring the application together and then.
I just until we have a bridge to insure.
Toll revenues, unless there's questions, nothing really there. It's in your packets. On the PD.
Well, I would like to bring up, and Debbie's still around. We're over $6 million in the kitty now. Was it 6.3?
Yes. Yeah.
Page 40, and we're making $25,000 a month in interest.
Yeah.
Yeah,
good
I
news.
mean, what, the traffic has been down a bit, but one of the good news, at least one little piece of good news, is that the interest rates have stayed high on the savings account. So you are earning more interest than we had expected. Also, as the term gets pushed out, by when this has to be, when you have to have your reserve in place, the traffic issues start to have less of an impact on it too, because even though traffic is down a bit, and I think we're starting to see a rebound. I think we're finally starting to see that come back up to where we had expected it to be. And so with that coming back, that's a plus also. But when we did the forecast, we had, of course, forecast that we were going to need the money sooner. Well, and now we may need it sooner, but it all depends on when we actually have to have this, which will be part of our negotiations with TIFIA, is when the reserve fund has to be funded. But we probably have a little more cushion there for that as well. So even with the original forecast, we were going to have the money long before I shouldn't say long, but probably a couple of years before we needed it. So it's looking pretty good. But yeah, we have 6.5 right now, and we're adding roughly 300,000, probably more now that we're getting into summer, but 300,000 a month. So it's growing.
I just have trouble seeing high interest rates as being a good thing. I understand in this context how it is, but it's certainly not helping us.
Right, exactly. It's like, I know.
It's not high interest rates now until we go to close. And then we want it to drop off.
Yeah. Okay, thank you, Debbie. Let's move on. We kind of talked about this, but anything else on the Kiewit contract update?
No, I mean, we should we're pushing to finalize those this week. We will have the hours and the dollars finalized this week. And then the contract terms we're focusing on, hopefully Kiewit will have that over to us, and we'll know where we're at by the end of the week.
Okay, so then we need to run that through the various committees.
Yeah, once we get all the information back and get a package, then we'll run that through the committees and back to the board.
And last informational item, cost optimization studies.
Yeah, so we've been taking a look kind of independently. We've had a couple of our lead structural designers taking an independent look at the current design that was done during phase 1A. They've come up with some ideas on the superstructure. We're going to be meeting on Wednesday with the E&C committee to go through that, looking at reduction in the depth of the structure and the type of steel that we're using.
What does depth mean?
I'm sorry.
What does depth mean?
Height of the beam. So we went from 20 foot.
The dimensions of the beams themselves.
Dimensions of the beams went from about 20 feet down to 12 or less. So and we've had KMC run through the numbers of what the cost savings of that is. So we're keeping a ledger on that side. So we've done that superstructure look. We're going to look at the substructure, which is your foundations, your columns next. By the end of the month, we'll have a summary of that we'll meet with Kiewit tentatively June 30th to present those to them and just see what their feedback is on incorporating some of those things into 1B. But it looks like there's some potential substantial savings there related to the design costs of the project. So
this is something that typically Kiewit would be doing in 1B anyway. As they evolve with design, the loads get better known. They start optimizing the design down. I think what HNTB done is kind of jumped the gun a little bit, made some assumptions, and came out with, hey, here's what they think the members will probably look like. Once we get through that, we sit down with Kiewit, see if there's no fatal flaws in the approach. And if not, then I think we've got a good start at how are we going to try and drive this cost down on this project.
Yeah, so I mean the babies weigh less than full-grown adults. So that works into the plan perfectly.
Wait, what?
Gary wants us to design a bridge for childbearing.
Oh, yes. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay,
This
moving
is how
on.
we
You
demonstrate,
had to ask.
this is how we demonstrate the benefit that we drive
Yes,
increased birth
This
rates
is how we demonstrate it
in
here.
Hood River and Klickitat.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You had to ask.
Which is, it's all that matters is Carrie and I understand.
Yeah,
You guys-
I'm glad you guys got it because I don't.
Can't afford this conversation.
Baby bridge.
We understood, we just didn't want to ask.
Okay, let's move on. Upcoming action items. Mike, why don't you just run through them real quick? Or we got.
Yeah, I mean, the phase 1B amendment we talked about, committee structure, again, has been something we've tentatively scheduled for June. Executive director is still in process of evaluating the benefits of that. We're working through the right-of-way pieces. So one thing we haven't touched deeply on is the 6F impact. So we are pricing, getting an appraisal fair market value of the port parcels that are under 6F. Once we have that appraisal, then we'll know the dollar amount, roughly the dollar amount that we're going to have to be looking for mitigation parcels. And then we'll be able to talk about what those mitigation parcels are.
When is the estimate supposed to be done?
It'll probably take them about a month to get that first appraisal done, yes. And then they'll do the detailed one, which will be longer than that, so.
And there were two clarifications in that memo. One, it is not only, it's not just raw land costs, but improvements.
They are talking to OPRD right now, so it'll be the highest and best use of that property is what they will appraise. So they will take into account what amenities are there and how that affects that highest and best use. So the fact that it has roads already there, it's got utilities on it. Is there a different use on there than there would be if all that doesn't exist?
But I thought the replacement property could also include improvements to
Correct.
balance. Okay.
Yeah.
And then the second that seemed like a clarification is looking at 6F, the temporary laydown, and that will need to be mitigated as well.
We are submitting a request to OPRD to consider not having us mitigate for the temporary impact.
So that memo is not really a final.
It is not final.
It's just that was a decision statement.
It was a draft to OPRD stating our position that we think we should not have to mitigate for the temporary.
Okay.
So it's looking at the current infrastructure of this property, even though some of the infrastructure may be on recreational land and not supposed to be there, right? So like if there's a bathroom in the port building, is that going to be taken into account?
That's what they're talking to OPRD is exactly how to account for that.
Got it, thank you.
And when it was,
That's all that.
and when it was put into place.
Right. Thank you.
Once we get this back, there's some strategy sessions we need to set as an authority. How we want to proceed forward.
Will the estimate come back to us in committees, or are we going to get the estimate back in a meeting like this one?
I will bring it through the committees and then back to the board.
Okay, great, thank you.
Unless you guys want to do something different, that's.
Well, Mike, can you elaborate there? So when you say committees, are you envisioning all committees?
Yeah, I think it would be best to have it walk through all committees so that everybody can have a discussion on it and then bring it back to the full board.
And I guess I would propose to my peers, it sounds like it's something that should come to the full authority. And then from that presentation, we determine if there's work that we would need a committee to look into.
Yeah, I guess I would.
Yeah, we can do that.
Marlon, my concern would be that if we have it going through all committees, that's equivalent to a serial meeting.
I agree. And right now, that's how it's getting
I'm agreeing
set
with
up.
you, yes.
Yeah. Oh, okay. Yeah.
Yep. We're just putting words on it.
We will
Thank
bring
you.
it to the full board.
Yeah, I mean, Mike, I would say generally it should be a rule of thumb. If there's something that's needing to go to all committees, that means it goes to the authority. And I think it should also be questionable when things are going to two committees. So even though we have our policy that the grant application is supposed to go to the comms committee first, if it's already getting routed to the other two committees, we should probably talk and figure out what are the two committees that absolutely should see that application before it goes to the full authority.
Okay, so if there's any more than two committees looking at any specific item, then it should just go to the full board. Is that what I'm
I mean,
hearing?
that
kind of,
I guess the problem I have with that is that you send something that's large like that to each committee, and their job is to review it through their expertise and their lens. And you have to have multiple meetings usually to go through a massive grant application or something through each lens. That does not necessarily constitute a serial meeting unless the person who is the staff is telling you what the other people are thinking, doing, and how they plan to vote on it. Then it becomes a serial meeting. Otherwise, it's a work session where you're working on your own specific issues.
I think it's still beneficial for us in a situation like that to get the document. So to get the document into the public record by making it clear that, in one of these meetings or in some other forum, by sending this document out, saying that this document is going to all the different committees, each of them will review it for their expertise, and we'll be discussing that back at the next commission meeting. But something to acknowledge that we're not doing a serial meeting, something to make it clear how we're avoiding the serial meeting.
I like that. I think on something like this particular topic, looking at it from the four committees, looking at it from the perspective of the four committees is healthy to do outside of the big group. It could make the bigger group discussion much more focused and quicker to get to resolution instead of going down in excruciating detail and did you think about this and that and so on from a perspective. It may be quicker to do the two sets of meetings.
Right. So my point is that Jake is right, Marla's right. We do have to worry about potentially creating a serial meeting. Yes, there are ways to avoid this being a serial meeting. So there's no hard and fast rule for you, Mike, but you are sensitive to this issue and understand what we're trying to avoid. And if we do have to set it up where we're asking each group of people to independently work on their expertise on it, that's totally reasonable. Well, and let's do that explicitly and in a knowing way and not just kind of accidentally back into that and then have to explain that when someone challenges what we've done.
Okay, so you agreed. Let me make sure I heard and understand what we're doing. You want to bring that to the board and acknowledge that the committees need to look at it and then have the committees look at it, bring it back. Is that what I heard you say?
No.
You're adding a month right there if you have.
I know, that's
one than the other.
I understood what was.
I think so. The other thing is you don't want a bunch of drafts in the public domain circulating out there that could be changing as well on a regular basis. And so that's why you send something. If we know we're going to apply for a grant, for example, you send it to each committee for their own expertise. They give staff their input, staff compiles it, then it goes in front of the full board to review the final version, but it gets sent to everybody prior to the meeting. So everyone has a chance to review the whole. What we don't need to do is keep having meetings where E&C is talking about finance or finance is talking about engineering, because that's when you get into that more issue. And more importantly, it gets really expensive because you're having just the same meeting 4 times where Mike's having the same conversation.
Right. But also you need to be more explicit in your directions to each of the committees as to what you're asking us to do so that we avoid this being a serialized meeting.
Gotcha. Okay. Got it.
Yeah, and I think separately, the 106 issue, which is where we started with this feedback, I am of the viewpoint that that should come to the full authority and we should all deliberate and understand where we are on a position. And then that would indicate if we want a committee to be taking it and doing further work. I agree with Jake, and that is how we handled the info review. I recall that on the comms committee, we were in receipt of it via email. We sent our revisions back through Mike Shannon, who then incorporated whatever those edits were. And then that worked its way through. So, I think that makes sense and is less of a burden and avoids the conflict like we could have with the 106, which I think is more a serial meeting risk if each committee is going to get a presentation and deliberate to reach a decision.
Well, our committee does not make any decision ever. So just to be
It's a nature of discussion.
Totally.
Yeah, I think it's just the.
Totally.
Yeah,
I just want to But
It's
this,
the equity of the information share. It's that we should all be in receipt of that information to deliberate and be making a determination on the direction we want to go, and the full authority should be working through that. And then it's going to committee. But otherwise, we still get this imbalance of information share where some are coming in with more informed or more time to reach a conclusion or determination, and others are more passive, just in receipt of information, being told what's been digested and what the best decision is.
Well, we can try it. I'm of the opinion, if we did this with 6F, we're probably going to need half the meeting just to talk about 6F. But that's okay. Let's give it a try and see if it works. If it doesn't, we revert back and push it through the subcommittees.
The information we're discussing though is just the appraisal value of a parcel of land that's being evaluated for the number first, and then going into more detail 1 month later. Is that correct?
I thought the discussion, so Marla, clarify.
We've got 3 topics.
Yeah, because I thought Marla was talking about the mitigation.
Which might be an executive session topic.
Yeah.
Right. So Marla, could you clarify what is it that you believe needs to be discussed and deliberated on as a whole?
I mean, to be quite honest, we just went down 3 different routes. And so I would also say I can't really quickly recall, but there was something in our 6F discussion that was about waiting for feedback around the estimate, if I'm recalling correctly, that was going to come in and determine different directions that we should go. And it sounded like that was all staying in a committee, and that Mike shared it would be going to multiple committees and then coming to the full authority. And so that triggered in my mind then the input I shared, which is whenever we're in that situation, serial meetings comes to mind, and that the committees are always supposed to be taking things because one needs a special lens before it comes to the full authority for a decision point. So my feedback is about staying true to where decision points occur, and that continues to be this full group. If that's not where we are in the 6F process, okay, perhaps.
And maybe I should have said it differently then. When I guess I need to be more careful of how I'm saying I'm taking things to people. When I say the 6F comes in, my thought is the 6F appraisal will come in. We will go to the engineering committee and talk about the impacts of that related to the engineering components. They will give us feedback on that part. We'll go to the finance committee, talk about the dollars. They will give us feedback on that. If comms committee needs to see it to talk about how we communicate out about it, then we would talk about the communications part with them. And then any decision making based on all of that feedback would come back to the board.
And decision-making would be issues like what sort of mitigation is appropriate and can we politically accept, which is where I think that's where
and that would come back to the board. Yeah, and that would be come back to the board of.
So I think we can get there in the process you just described.
Yeah. An example would be there's 6 properties that could be used for mitigation. Those 6 need to be brought back to the full board to discuss which ones of those you want to prioritize as your mitigation in consideration. And there may be others we need to consider, but you don't want to appraise all 6.
That's the key part. And so maybe we are all saying the same thing. That should not be going to a committee. That
would not. Correct. That would come back to the board for discussion of which of those 6 and prioritizing them would come back to the board for. Here's our top priorities on the mitigation properties.
With the staff recommendation.
Yeah.
There you go.
Yep.
And the authority could reject them all and say, no, find other ones.
We try very hard not to bring any decision making to any committee. Because they're not allowed.
Yeah.
Okay, move on. Let's move on then. Looking down through the rest of the upcoming items, Mike, any of these that you really want to point out?
No, everything else is just static stuff.
Yeah. Okay. Upcoming events, nothing. So the next meeting is June the 23rd, 2 to 4. Just go around the room. Anybody want to bring anything up? Anybody on the video?
Hey, this is Jake. I posted the Portland State population estimate website. It does provide some estimation between census years, so I don't know if Carrie's tracking that, but there might be some good information there.
Okay, thanks for doing that.
Yeah, so Carrie, I think what Jake is explaining.
Carrie's not on.
Yeah, Carrie.
Okay. In any case, if someone could convey to him, the state of Oregon has this unusual situation where Portland State University is an official, has an official role in determination of the state estimates of population, which are used for budgetary purposes and for all sorts of things that have to do with legislation, which he may not know coming from outside of Oregon.
Everybody hates it.
Everybody hates it, it's very problematic. But they make the estimates in between the decennial censuses.
Yeah, okay.
And there's also of course, what is it, the 12 and the 17 year, the ACS, American Community Surveys, which provide the additional information, but I'm sure he knows about those.
And Jake, you posted that in the chat on this meeting?
Yeah, it's in.
Okay, sorry, I can't see the chat, so.
Yep.
Okay, we'll get that link over to Carrie. Thanks.
Anything else from anybody? Okay, then we're going to draw this meeting to a close. Thank you all.
Thank you.